It was good.
Okay, drive back yesterday?
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. Still took 8 hours.
It's still, yeah.
So do you go to the Gulf? I mean, did you go 65 the whole way down, or?
No, well, going down, they had us, and coming back, you know, when you put it on your,
GPS thing?
yeah, they had us zigzag out of Montgomery and go down on 331.
Gotcha. But
because
you didn't have to deal with,
some of the traffic out on 65. It just, even we had 2 minor accidents that we had to wait on, and then when we were getting back to Franklin, we actually got off before 8:40 because there was some kind of wreck somewhere in that area. So you just, yeah, you just have those.
when we go to Jacksonville to see Walter's mom, or if we go to St. Augustine Beach or Cocoa Beach, we do 24 to 75 and then over. And so that means we go through Chattanooga and Atlanta. And it usually, at least one of them has construction.
That's correct.
Now, most of the time, they don't both have it, because you'd be at total standstill all the time if they did. But I think they may coordinate because it's not usually both. But yeah, I hate driving through both of them.
I know, they're tough. But that's what people are saying about Nashville now.
I know, it is, I mean,
Yeah, no problem. We can just get.
yeah, like, there's traffic all the time. It used to be like on a Sunday, you know, there wouldn't be that many cars on the road, but that's not how it is.
This has been one of the single best things about moving to Fairview. Is the traffic is just, there isn't.
You don't have to go downtown. You know, you don't have to get in that.
Even coming here, there's never really much traffic. It's great. How's the beach?
The beach was good. The
Yeah, we're ready.
water was absolutely beautiful. No riptide, no seaweed, just clear as could be.
That's great.
Kids had a great big time.
When we went to Myrtle Beach with Kyle and Abby, and the whole family went, and we started feeling a little stinging, not like jellyfish stinging, but it was stinging, and it got on Abby really bad, and they called it sea lice. It's the minuscule jellyfish.
What do you do at the beach, Bob?
Sit in a chair.
Under the umbrella?
I bet you do some cooking.
That's what Jen's favorite is, under the chair, under the umbrella.
Yeah. I venture out and get my feet wet. Then I just watch the kids.
Stay on the beach all night. I see
But they spend as much time in the pool
Quit talking.
as they did in the ocean.
Well, yeah, the pool, you know exactly how it's going to be. You don't have to worry about tide or salt or seaweed or sand. So it's good to have both, I think.
Yeah, so they get both.
I've never really been a beach guy.
Kyle isn't either. But all the rest of us are, so he is in.
He deals with
That's right.
That's fair.
How are you?
Well,
Got
they're
there?
taking their camper,
You won't
they're going to Lake Michigan. Because he's like, it'll be cooler. He's not afraid that the air conditioner won't hold up in Florida when we cool down. So they're going to Lake Michigan end of July. Good coffee.
Who won all the money last night?
What happens at my place stays. sit behind a winner, never mind, I'm sit behind him.
Yeah.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, yourself?
Good, good.
Yeah?
Oh, I
Got your
just
Yeti,
changed
ready
my
to go?
plane
Lee, how do you
ticket.
set up?
Paid off. I've never done
I
plane
love
that
it.
way
Yeah, it
before.
definitely paid off. You did great.
Where's the crazy one?
It's probably a one and done
Well, that's all you needed.
So you quit your job, huh? Was that good?
though. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm leaving for Europe in the morning.
Going to London, Kentucky? Paris, Tennessee?
Paris, Texas.
Paris, Texas, Paris, Tennessee. Yeah.
Moving out.
I'm lucky to be able to afford enough gas to get to the city's edge.
Understood.
Shane, I know there's a big crowd right outside the door if you'd send them on in. All right, well, let's get started this morning. We're going to be picking up in chapter 33. Today and next Sunday should finish us in looking at the life of Jacob. Of course, it's not over, but it's what's called the Jacob narrative. Ends at the end of 35 with his return to his father and the death of Isaac. But Lord willing, we'll get there. We've come a long way. So we're going to look today at 33 and most likely at 34 as well, which is 33 is kind of calm and compared to 34, but we'll move through these and see how we do. Let's start with prayer. Father, as we come to you again this morning, just thankful that we can now gather here and look at your word. Thank you for the example of the life of Jacob and how I can see myself there and yet see your wonderful grace that dealt with him and deals with me, notwithstanding the failures and the shortcomings that I possess, not dissimilar to the things he did. But thank you for what we see in his life, for his growth in you as we look at these texts, and just help us today as we look at these two chapters, and we pray you might open them to us through your Spirit, that they might be profitable, Father, in our lives as examples to us. We thank you for all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we're gonna wade right in. This is all set up for us because of what we've studied. This is actually now the big moment. We've been waiting on this. Jacob's been waiting on this. Now he sees Esau. And think about that for a second. You have not seen your twin brother for 20 years. You left because he said, I'm just waiting on Dad to die so I can kill my brother. And Mom and Dad said, you need to go. And he went to relatives in Mesopotamia to there find a wife, and that has taken 20 years. Now he's coming back, and if you kind of remember, he had the difficulties leaving with Laban, and Laban traced him down and caught up with him, and then they resolved their differences enough for him to move on. And now he's on the east side of the Jordan. He's moving south, and he sends part of his group on ahead to go see Esau and to tell him that Jacob's really been blessed, and they do. They find Esau, and Esau's got 400 men, and he's moving in their direction. Now remember, Jacob is with family. He's got servants, he's got a zillion livestock, but he's basically with family. And right before he has this encounter now with Esau, we saw him deal with God as he wrestled with the man and got the blessing there before he left. So he's a bit of a different Jacob, more than a bit of a different Jacob. He's a different Jacob than 20 years ago. But he's not the only one who has changed. So that's where we are. And now this is the moment. Look at 33:1. Is it up on the screen behind me? Okay.
Yes.
Then Jacob raised his eyes, and you're going to see that phrase again. Hang on to that a little bit. Jacob raised his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men were with him, just as he'd been told. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 slave women. He put the slave women and their children in front. That's Zilpah and Bilhah. And Leah and her children. And Leah had 6 sons and a daughter. They're next. And Rachel and Joseph last. But let me see how far I'm going here. Yeah, let me just, let's do verse 3. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Several things happening there as Esau approaches. What do you think about the way he divided his family?
Not important.
Yeah, well, his favorites were in the back, so I guess they'd be the last to experience whatever Esau was going to do.
So how would you feel if you were the son of Bilhah?
Yeah.
Sacrificial.
Dad has told you where you stand.
Yes.
And Jacob was raised in an environment where parents played favorites. And he certainly has preferred Rachel, and he shows that again here. How many children of Jacob are named in these 3 verses?
Only Joseph.
Just one. Joseph is the only one who is singled out. This kind of begins to set up what's going to come in the Joseph narrative among the brothers. I mean, this seems like a small thing, but you are communicating value. You are communicating value to these kids the way they're arranged. Now, one good thing was about what he did here was that he went ahead of them. Instead of following them, Jacob at least gets out front, which is a different sort of characteristic than maybe we had some time ago. But he gets out ahead of them as he approaches his brother. And what does he do? Now, bows down there means all the way down.
Prostrate, right?
He is all the way on the ground. What is that signifying as he approaches Esau? And why did he bow 7 times?
Well, my Bible says it was a sign of homage for a king. Jacob was taking no chances.
Okay, it is. He's giving homage to his brother. He is submitting, if you will, himself before his brother as he approaches him. Why 7 times? Why not 6? Why not 5?
Isn't 7 completion?
Yes. I think that's the best I can come up with, that the number 7 typically means it's a completion, so he's doing it in a way that expresses that. I am completely humbled before you, my brother, before he says a word. All right, let's look now at these next 4 verses. Here's Esau. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. He raised his eyes. Here's the second time of that. That's Esau. Raised his eyes and saw the women and the children and said, "Who are these with you?" So he, that's Jacob, said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the slave women came forward with their children, and they bowed down. And Leah likewise came forward with her children, and they bowed down. And afterward Joseph came forward with Rachel, and they bowed down.
That's strange.
Tell me what you're thinking.
But the women come forth with their children, the first 2, and bow down, but in the third time around, it's the son that comes forward and brings his mother.
Yes. Again, the only child mentioned, but
Yes.
he's emphasized there that he came forward with Rachel, and they bowed. Yeah. How many verbs are there in that verse 4 about Esau?
5.
5 verbs. He ran. I mean, you've got your estranged brother coming toward you. He's prostrating himself in front of you. And he runs to meet him. He embraces him. He hugs him. He falls on his neck. He kisses him. And the 2 of them weep together. This is a great moment in Scripture. This is a great picture of reconciliation. Esau carrying no grudge here. It's amazing. The way he was going to put him to death, and now he's so excited to see his twin brother that he runs to him, and they have a wonderful reunion here. It's good stuff. Let me jump over a second. You'll see maybe another little look at something similar in Genesis 45:15. This is the reunion of Joseph and his brothers. And he kissed all of his brothers and wept on them, and afterwards his brothers talked with him. This is after Joseph is number 2 to Pharaoh in Egypt and goes through this whole scenario with his brothers. This is their reunion. Very, very similar to what we saw back here in verse 4. Just another kind of picture of it. All right. What New Testament figure does Esau remind you of there in verse 4?
Prodigal son. I mean, that reunion was like that.
Yeah. Yeah. The father there running to embrace his son. Very similar language picked up by Luke in Luke 15. Do you see any evidence that Esau's response to Jacob was caused by Jacob's elaborate plan? Remember now, Jacob has sent all these 550 livestock in layers ahead of him to Esau. And is this because of what Jacob did? Getting some shaking of the head. Doesn't appear to be. Jacob, you remember, prayed to the Lord that Esau would receive him well, and God has answered that. We don't know how God has worked in Esau's life to bring this about, but we certainly see the result here.
Well, and it says that he raised his eyes and saw the women and children. In other words, I guess they were not his focus. His focus was solely Jacob until they had their reunion.
And I think it's similar in verse 1. Jacob, they're evidently moving, and then Jacob really begins to focus on what's ahead, and that's Esau there. And yeah, verse 5, you see him looking around at the women and children. And Esau has really two questions here. And the first one is right here, as Dottie was mentioning. Who are these with you? He wants to know, tell me about your family. Not unlike a reunion we would have. You know, tell me, I haven't seen you. Tell me about these kids. I'm excited about that. And he did. He says, the children whom God has graciously given your servant. We begin to see in this Jacob now experiencing and testifying to the grace of God in his life. This is he's not seeking credit for what he's done, but he acknowledges that God has graciously given him these children. All right. Let me see here. Yeah, you're going to see grace throughout this. It's going to keep coming up. One commentator wrote that earlier Esau had cared little about his birthright. Now he cared little for old grudges. So, but his second question is really down here in verse 8. And we'll look at that. He says, what do you mean by all this company which I have met? So, you see what he's saying here, all that livestock that was sent on ahead, and Esau's going, Jacob, what's the deal? What did you mean with all of that? Why did you send that on ahead to me? And Jacob says, to find favor in the sight of my Lord. The word favor there is, the Hebrew word is hen. We would spell it H-E-N. And it's the word for grace in the Old Testament. He said, I wanted to find favor. I wanted grace in the sight of my Lord. And look how he refers to his brother. He refers to him as Lord. That's, let me see, I think I have another. Yeah, it's Adon, if I pronounce that correctly. It's not calling him God, but he is giving him a title of real respect to emphasize his submission to his brother. You notice that in verse 9, Esau's response to Jacob's explanation of why all the livestock, Esau says, I have plenty, my brother. He calls him brother. It's just sort of a difference. Lord is the name Jacob uses for Esau, and he calls him brother. I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own. Isn't that interesting? Esau lost the blessing of Isaac because of what Jacob did. And now here we have Esau having an opportunity to say, you know, I really was due a lot, in my opinion. And this is a chance I can open my arms and sweep all this back in, because he's offering it. And Esau goes, I don't desire anything. I've got plenty. I'm okay. But as we look on, look what Jacob says. No, please. If I have found favor, if I found grace in your sight, then accept my gift from my hand. For I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably or graciously. So, Jacob, why do you think Jacob is so insistent that Esau take the gift? We're talking about a huge quantity of livestock.
Show a true change of heart.
show a true change of heart from,
From when he left him 20 years before.
okay,
It almost seems like he's trying to give the blessing back,
Mhm.
right? Like if you go to Isaac's blessing of Jacob, he says, "And may your mother's sons bow down to you," which is the exact opposite of what he's just done as Esau's coming forward.
Right.
Obviously, there's elements of the blessing that are not there, right? But it's interesting.
Well, he's had a long time to think about what he did. So there might be guilt involved there as well.
don't you think you would feel guilty and wanting, even though God intended for Jacob to have the blessing? That was God's intent. Jacob just got, through his mother, got greedy about getting it himself. He needed to do it, so he engaged in deception. But he ultimately got it. Remember, his dad blessed him twice, and then he got the blessing from God at Bethel in chapter 28. So here he says, accept it, please, for I see your face as one sees the face of God. What do you think that means? I see your face, Esau, like one sees the face of God. Has he seen the face of God? In quotes? Yes, Peniel. So what's similar between that and this?
He's still alive.
He's still alive. Yes. Yes. Yes, I saw the face of God and I lived. That was real big, and Esau doesn't take him out here. What else is similar between the two events?
I imagine he's been wrestling with this for some time. The wrestling piece of it. You know?
Okay. Okay.
He's had a long time to think about it.
He has had. How did God treat him at Peniel? Graciously. Grace is both places. And I see your face as one sees the face of God. It's the same kind of experience. I'm experiencing grace from you as I did from him. I think the key is in that last phrase, you have received me favorably, or you've received me graciously. God did as well. Jacob had no idea what was going on when the wrestling started at Peniel, but when it was over, he knew who he had encountered. Remember, the angel of the Lord says to him, "Why do you need to know my name? You know." He knew with whom he had dealt. And verse 11, he just pleads again, "Please accept my gift, because God has dealt graciously with me and because I have plenty." So he urged him, and he, Esau, accepted it. So this is pretty much the reunion. But let me go back and touch just for a second on something that Travis was getting into. How do you fit together this encounter where Jacob bows to his brother, calls him Lord, submits to him as he does here, with the statement in 25:23, that's God's statement to Rachel that the older will serve the younger. And then the blessing that Isaac gave that Travis just talked about in 27:29, be master of your brothers and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Okay, that's what was promised back there. Here we have a reversal. How do you put those two together? Just thinking about that. What brothers are supposed to bow to Jacob. The older is to serve him. And here he is serving his older twin. It's quiet.
To me, when you look at the older shall serve the younger, the context immediately preceding that is two nations are in your womb, two peoples will be separated, one will be stronger than the other, the older will serve the younger. So we've got three lines that seem clearly national. Seems odd to change the fourth.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. And also, function does not speak of value. Jacob may have a calling that is different from Esau, but it does not mean that Jacob has greater value before God than Esau does. And what are we seeing here except Jacob humbling himself before the one he has wronged, which is exactly what you want to do, or you want him to do, if you will. Or I would think God wanted him to do, as he realized where he was now and seeing his brother, humbling himself before him. He needed to do that, to be reconciled with his brother.
Can I offer just a slight?
Yeah, do it.
I don't think it's a counter perspective, but it's a perspective that might be considered, especially as we read on through the rest of the life of Jacob. Is in 32, Jacob grovels to the Lord, right? Save me. Do what you said you were going to do, because I fear Esau. That's his prayer.
Mm-hmm.
The very next step in the narrative is Jacob starts partitioning out the things he's going to get. So he's going to earn this. He's like, God, help me out, but I'm taking this in my own hands. The rest of the narrative we go through is Jacob wrestling with all these things. We come to this place. We also know we're in a society that I see Jacob growing, but I also still see this as Jacob taking a lot into his own hands. Because he prayed, the first words out of his brother is, hey, I'm good, we're good. And the very next thing he wants to move into, and I think our Western eyes can be like, see, he really wants to humble himself to his brother. In that society, he wants his brother to publicly acknowledge that he has forgiven Jacob. I would say is an important factor here. I think Jacob's looking out for Jacob. He's looking out for number one. I think we'll see more of that in his life to come. But I would say this is as much of a move that we may consider that Jacob hasn't relented and didn't fall on his knees and say, thank you, Lord, for delivering me with my brother. He's still working his stuff out. And within that society, I think the context is really important to consider. Is this still Jacob holding on to work for a public, visible acknowledgement that Esau, because if Esau changes his mind 2 weeks from now, he's got the public. So I think there's something here we may also look before we swoon too far, let the pendulum swoon too far into Jacob's in a super good spot here. Just something to consider.
Good, good.
That's what I was looking at too. I look at, I mean, it may be my sinful nature that looks at it this way, but, you know, his brother came to meet him with 400 men, which to me indicates that Jacob had his servants and his shepherds taking care of his animals, but that's what he was moving down with. His brother was coming out to him with 400 men, which almost indicates an army type thing. So to me, I'm looking at this going, he's hedging his bets. He's gonna have to live in the same land with his brother. We gotta get along with this because his brother could just squash him with all these men. So I see it as hedging his bets and moving down in the same land with his brother.
He does acknowledge God, that God has dealt graciously with him. He points that out more than once with this. Maybe he's not acknowledging specifically that God has delivered him from Esau, but and he does push hard to get Esau to accept the gift. You can kind of look at this and try to get to what you really think the reason is behind him. But he got it done. He did get Esau to take the gift. But now look at verse 12, because this is going to tie into what Linda just said. So this is Esau again. Then Esau said, "Let's journey on and go, and I will go ahead of you." So Esau here is saying, my 400 men and I will protect you. We'll go on ahead of you. And Jacob responds with resistance. But he said to him, "My Lord," again that name, "my Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds that are nursing are a matter of concern to me. And if they are driven hard just one day, all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will proceed at my leisure at the pace of the cattle that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, and until I come to my Lord at Seir." Let me stop there. Where's Seir? Remember? In relationship to where they meet, where is Seir? It's south. Where is Edom? Seir is in Edom. So Esau thinks they're going to Seir. Jacob says, no, you go on ahead. And because I've got nursing calves, I've got little kids, we can't move as fast. You go on ahead and let me come at my leisure. Where was Jacob? Well, maybe I need to go back to the map. Let's get us all on the map here for just a second. Okay, let's get some. Here's Edom down here, if you can see it. I'm going to enlarge this a bit. How are we doing? Can we kind of see?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're on the east side still of the Jordan. We're somewhere in here, close Peniel, close to Jabbok. And Edom is down here. This is where Seir is. So Esau is going in this direction. And Jacob is saying, you go ahead and I'll catch up. Where was Jacob supposed to go, according to what God had told him? He goes back to the land of his father. This is not, over here on the east side of the Jordan, is not the land of his father. He's to go to Canaan. A lot think he was really supposed to go to Bethel. We're going to see today that he goes to Sukkot, which is right here. Still Sukkot is a little bit east of the Jordan River, so he's not in what we call Canaan at this point in time. We kind of get that laid out because you get here that Esau and Jacob are not together. Jacob is resisting because he's not going to go in that direction. I made the comment, and it makes no difference if you remember it at all, but I'll tell you what I'm thinking about here. You remember when he was fleeing from Laban, and we looked at how far he had to go from Padan Aram to get down to the mountains of Gilead. It was a long distance. He got a 3-day head start, and it took 7 days for Laban to catch him. They were moving. I was just struck reading this that Jacob all of a sudden here, and I don't know the time, and I've raised cattle, so I do know there is a season for calving. There is, with livestock, there is a season for that. But all of a sudden now, Jacob can't move quickly at all. And he moved like a freight train coming out of there earlier, but now he can't at all. Maybe he's right. I can't say, but it appears to be a bit of an inconsistency to me. Then Esau said in verse 15, "Please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." I mean, Esau is, brother, let me take care of you. Let me help you. Let me leave some of my men, and I'll go on ahead, but let me leave some of them because you may need their help. But Jacob says, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord," lowercase l. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built for himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the place is named Succoth. So Jacob moves in an entirely different direction from the map. He's moving east toward Canaan. Esau's going south to go back home. I will tell you there are a lot of different opinions about this. I think it reads like Jacob is being deceitful with him. Why could Jacob not have simply said to Esau, "Brother, the Lord has told me I need to return to Canaan. So that's what I need to do now. You can go on back to Edom, but I've got to go to Canaan, or back to Seir. But I've got to go to Canaan." But he doesn't. And that's kind of a mystery. Some of those who really defend Jacob here write that, well, it doesn't mean that he was going to Seir right then. It may mean that he intended to go to Seir later. The problem with that is there's no mention of him going later there.
David, the map that you had at the red line was Esau's path. That was
Down to Edom.
because the red line going down to Edom was shown. I was confused by the title of the map because it said.
Yeah, well, let me get over here a little bit more.
So Jacob turns west,
You see
and
Jacob coming over this way,
okay.
heading, did I say east, heading west? Exactly. Thank you, Kip. And
But then I guess the red line is showing then when Esau heads back home, he goes all the way down to Edom.
right, exactly. And then we'll see him get on over in the land into Shechem here shortly. One of the other things that in reading this that commentators have written is that when Jacob and Esau are together again, Esau has taken no offense at this. And they will be, we will see them together again. We'll see him bury Isaac, and then we'll see him again in 36, down at about verse 7, if I recall correctly. So it's a little puzzling, but I've got to say on its face, it appears to me that Jacob knows where he's going. He's headed back to the land, albeit very slowly. And why he doesn't reveal that to Esau here seems to me to be a bit of a mystery. Let me also say that he's in no real hurry. Look at verse 17. When he gets to Sukkot, he builds himself a house and barns. And the place is called, the name of that means booths. So Jacob is really taking his time to get back where the Lord wanted him to be. One of the things we're going to see is that while we don't know how many years he was there, obviously it was for some time because he built structures. But in a moment we're going to see Dinah, and she's going to be the focus of the narrative. And they think she was probably 5 when Jacob left Laban. So let's go on down to verse 18. Jacob, these last 3 verses of 33 sort of are a prelude to what's coming. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram and camped before the city. He bought the plot of land where he had pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected there an altar and called it El Elohi Israel. That's God, the God of Israel. And so we now see him back in the land, building an altar there to worship the Lord. There's some debate about the word safely here. That word, I'll see how to pronounce, is shalem. Some think that word is really a reference to a city outside the city of Shechem, and that the city of Shechem is not referring to Shechem itself, but to one of the primary characters in the next part of the narrative, which could well be, could be either way. But he is definitely in Canaan, and he's camped there. He buys a piece of land from the family of Hamor, who is Shechem's dad, for 100 pieces of money. So you can try to compare that with the money that Abraham spent for the burial plot at Machpelah when he bought that land, but it's very difficult to dissect those. Doesn't really make much difference, I don't think. And there he erected the altar and began to worship the Lord.
Oh, David, he erected the altar and called it Elohe Israel. Now the land is not called Israel at this point. So the only one that's called Israel is Jacob, and that's the name that God gave him in the last chapter. So the altar is, he is my God.
Yeah, he is
So
God.
It doesn't have anything to do with the land itself. It has to do with Jacob himself. And that's the first time we see anybody refer to him by the name God gave him.
Yes, we're going to see it. I think it comes up in this next section as we get toward the end of the Dinah thing. But yeah, nobody else is referring to him as Israel at this point, other than
The
God.
narrative or anything, it doesn't, I mean, it didn't change his name in the narrative immediately, even though the narrative said, God said, I'm changing your name.
Right. But not a lot of people heard that. You ready to go on to Dinah? Any more questions about getting him to Shechem? All right, let's look at this narrative. This is one of the most controversial narratives in Genesis. The story of the narrative is pretty plain. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, the only daughter we're told of at this point in time that Jacob has, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. When Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, so we're into a power family here, saw her, he took her and lay with her and raped her. But he was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as a wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob said nothing until they came in. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard about it. And the men were grieved, and they were very angry, because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel. Linda,
Yeah.
there it
Now
is.
they're referring to it as a land, not as the man.
There's a reference. What'd you say? People group, yeah. By sleeping with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not to be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage, and intermarry with us, and give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. So you will live with us, and the land shall be open to you. Live and trade in it, and acquire property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your sight, and I will give whatever you tell me." This is the proverbial blank signed check. You talk about somebody who made themselves vulnerable. This guy does right here. "Demand of me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give you whatever you tell me, but give me the girl in marriage." But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing, that is, give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, if you will become like us, in that every male of you will be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you do not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go." Now their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. The young man did not delay to do this, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more respected than all the household of his father. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the people of the city, saying, "These men are friendly to us, therefore let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. We will take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to live with us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised just as they are circumcised. Will their livestock and their property and all their animals not be ours? Let's just consent to them, and they will live with us." All who went out of the gate of his city, listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. Now it came about on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, they're her two full brothers, each took his sword and came upon the city undetected and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. Jacob's sons came upon those killed and looted the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks, their herds, and their donkeys, and that which was in the city, and that which was in the field. And they captured and looted all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives, even everything that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me. by making me repulsive among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And since my men are few in number, they will band together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. But they said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? This is a significant passage. I wanted to read it all so we're all into the full flow of what happens here. Dinah is at best estimate, maybe best estimate, is estimated to be probably a young teen at this point. Remember, she's the last child born to Leah, and she's pretty young. But it's taken some time for Jacob to get from where she was born, and they didn't leave right after her birth, so she had some growth then, and now working their way all the way into Shechem. And Dinah went out to visit the daughters of the land. Did Dinah do anything wrong? There are those who argue she did. Seems a little difficult with a young girl who, how many girls has she been raised around that we know of? She knows her mother, and she knows Rachel, and she knows the other two wives. Anyhow, I don't think you can really put a lot on her, but some do.
As a teenager, she couldn't be held responsible, even as an adult, for what happened to her.
Right. Different culture, but she just went out to see other girls in the land. That's all. That would be expected.
But it's really important that we acknowledge that
Yes.
she's not at fault at all.
I agree. I don't think she is either. When Shechem, she must have been pretty. When Shechem saw her, he took her and lay with her and raped her. And that is how the Hebrew reads. It is a forcible rape of Dinah. Now you get the contrast in verse 3. He sees her, he takes her, it's a little bit of a link back to the garden. She saw what she desired as good, and she took it. That's exactly what Shechem does here. But now you get the comma. But he was deeply attracted to her, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. And I will say to you that you remember on down when the two brothers are killing the males? Do you remember that it said they got Dinah from the house of Shechem? It's very likely that Dinah remained in the house of Shechem during this entire time. She was not released from there until her brothers got her.
I have a question.
Sure.
So it talks about when this happened that her brothers who were in the field heard about this. And then you come to verse 19, and they're talking about Shechem. I'm assuming it says, now he was more respected than all the household of his father. So would these men that agreed to do what he said about being circumcised, would they have known also what he had done to Dinah?
That's an excellent question. It really doesn't tell us. So I don't know. That's an excellent question. If they did, it didn't bother them, obviously, but they may not have known. So Shechem really wants her in marriage. And verse 5 is significant too. Jacob heard about this. But the boys weren't there, and Jacob said nothing. Why?
He had no defense.
You know what?
He had no defense.
Okay. Right. I'll give you that. He didn't have them there. I think I know a lot of dads who would have spoken up against the crowd if that's what they faced, regardless if their daughter is involved. Jacob is silent in this narrative until when?
So after they're all dead, after they kill all men.
And then he turns on Simeon and Levi and says, look what you've done to me. This is not a good narrative for Jacob.
No, it's kind of, David does kind of the same thing later on when his daughter is raped by one of his other sons. And
I got this sense, David, back that Esau was more comfortable with who he was than Jacob was comfortable with who he was. And maybe that is carried forward into this new narrative.
Jacob just seems to continue to deal with issues in his life. I mean, he stumbles and falls repeatedly, just repeatedly. I think he makes progress, but he also stumbles and falls. And notice how this begins to unfold once the sons come in. Hamor comes over to talk to Jacob, but we don't get any narrative between them because the boys seem to come back in verse 7, and they are not only grieved, but they are angry. Just what Jacob should have been. You know, that would be a righteous anger. This was wrong. You took my daughter. They're angry about it. And that's something that should not have happened. Then you see Hamor coming in and saying, yeah, look, he's speaking to them, which I presume means the sons and Jacob. And he says, the soul of my son longs for your daughter. I think we see in this, he's really appealing more to the sons than he is to Jacob. Your daughter here includes the sons. Please give her to him in marriage. You could argue that only Jacob's going to do that, but I think he sees the sons as part of the authority that he needs to deal with. And then Hamor goes on, and he's got a plan. Let's be one people. Let's get together. You can have our daughters. We'll take your daughters. We'll be one here in the land. What do we know about that?
that wasn't God's plan.
Not God's plan at all. Not God's plan at all. So Shechem then speaks up, and he'll give whatever you tell me. I'll give the bridal gift, just let me have her. So that's the proposal. Hamor makes it.
And it is clear he's speaking to her father and her brothers.
Yes. He makes this, but look at this in verse 13. Jacob's sons answered. Not Jacob. The boys answered. Because they had a plan. They had a plan that is really deceitful. But they've come up with it. And it's the sons. It's not just Simeon and Levi. It's all the boys. They're together in this. That made me think of Joseph. So how old is Joseph here? You remember as soon as Joseph was born to Rachel, Jacob's saying we need to leave. But he didn't get to leave then. So Joseph is coming along. He's the baby brother, I would say. I have trouble seeing Joseph as a part of this, but we're really not, he's not specifically exempted out of it, but it would seem that he might be too young. But anyhow, they said, look, we'll do it, but you all have got to be circumcised. And that takes Hamor and Shechem to the people of the city, the men of the city, to talk to them and say, this is a good deal, guys. And now look at what they say. We'll join with them and we'll get their property. So everybody, you just look around in this narrative. How much fault do you want to find? Hamor is deceitful. He's got a plan. Yeah, we can do this to get my son his wife, but then we'll get their stuff. This will be good for us. So he's selling here to his people. He's getting votes. And you got Jacob, who's just standing back, who doesn't defend his daughter. He doesn't rebuke his sons and say, guys, time out. Can I talk to you over here a minute? You know, what are you talking about here? And then you've got these guys who've got their own agenda that they're planning on coming out winners in the end. So they all get circumcised, and then here comes Simeon and Levi. Was this the plan all along?
I think so.
For Hamor and Shechem? Is it the plan, is that what you're asking?
No, was it the plan of the brothers all along that they would kill the circumcised?
Yes.
guys are